I would say that Sunday was a bit of a surprise in general. Not that the 49ers won. I think we both picked the 49ers to win. I picked them to win by 8. I don't remember your margin, but I don't know that we saw 40 plus points and holding them and their offense down to 19 points. It was pretty impressive. There was a lot of things that you can point to, I believe, that were a surprise from Sunday. But Sunil, for you, what is the biggest surprise from this game?
The discipline.
Mm.
And I want to mention a player. I want to mention 2 players and then just shout out the defensive line for what they did. The 2 players I want to mention who I don't think are getting enough praise from the faithful right now, Ambry Thomas, Oren Burks. 2 players that have come in and filled in gaps that would have been weaknesses that opposing offenses could take advantage of. I was watching these breakdowns from the day after the game, so Monday, and they were talking about how the 49ers were picking at the 3rd cornerback in for the Eagles, and how Jawan Jennings was getting, being able to win that battle every single time. And then I was watching, breakdowns for all other games, and that's basically what other offenses do, right? They look for wherever the weakness is, wherever the injured player, whoever replaced the injured player, whoever's the backup, and then they run that to that and take advantage of it. We've seen it time after time after time with our defense being able to take advantage of, the 3rd cornerback or, the backup, whatever, right? And when Dre Greenlaw got kicked out, there wasn't a drop in play because Oren Burks stepped in and played exactly the way you want Oren Burks to play. But Ambry Thomas, to me, Jesse, and I've tweeted this, and I want to shout out because this was a guy I was really, really high on, and I was getting a lot of egg on my face because he wasn't playing the way that I expected him to play, or anybody expected him to play. Got to shout out Steve Wilkes for getting the best out of him, but his ability to hold strong on the outside, to let Lenore Demo step into that slot position, along with Charvarius Ward playing the way he's playing, gives us a cornerback crew that, especially with the way that the 49ers attack this offense, where the rushers, the defensive line, their goal wasn't to get to the quarterback. Their goal was to keep him in the pocket. And you saw multiple coverage sacks because Jalen Hurts couldn't find anybody open, even though it felt like he had like 10 seconds where he was just in the pocket, just waiting there, waiting for somebody to open up. And to me, that's a shout out to the secondary. That's a shout out even a guy like Jared Brown, who's come in and hasn't been a weakness at all. But I want to shout out Ambry Thomas, especially because he was looking like he was going out of the league. And now he's looking like an imperative extension that the 49ers might need to make, being able to possibly get him on a cheaper deal because he's only shown out this 1 year.
Yeah, absolutely. And I tweeted out at some point during that game that I couldn't be happier for Ambry Thomas. There's certain players that you just root for, and I remember his rookie year when he came in and was playing, I thought pretty well. A lot of people were really tearing into him because of it seemed like every week he was giving up the one play. He would get mossed every single week, but he was in position. But when you watched him play in and play out, he was playing really good football, and I talked about it a lot. And I had hoped that he was really going to take that step forward his second year, and it just didn't happen. I have my reasons as to why it didn't happen, or my thoughts as to why it didn't happen. And then it just seemed like the further we got away from that first year, the less of a chance that it was going to happen. And then I watched him up close and personal during training camp, and every single time Sunil he was on the field, it was mouse in the house picking on Ambry Thomas. Every time he entered the field, they picked on Ambry Thomas. I'm like, oh man, I don't see how there's a scenario who doesn't make this team. Then they have a couple injuries at the corner spot. I think that helped his cases to make this team. And thank God it did, because he's really showing that he's able to turn it around. But I think the biggest thing is Wilkes understanding what these players do best, another topic of conversation that we've had is it's really strange that this team plays so much zone coverage when all they seem to bring in are man press corners. Why do they continue to play soft zone? That is not what these corners do. And for a while, there was that stretch where they couldn't seem to stop anybody, but they kept playing soft zone. Now they're playing more press man. They're putting these corners in a position to succeed and do what they do best. And it's starting to show Sunday in and Sunday out. And I had a big question about this secondary. Also, this was my biggest surprise, pleasant surprise, I will say, was the secondary holding up the way that they did. I was worried that the defensive line wouldn't be able to get home because Philly's offensive line was so good. And I do think there was some element to that. But really, the game plan was to contain Hurts more so than rush Hurts and allow him to sit back there and go through his reads. He still struggled to find people open on a regular basis. If you look at the numbers of A.J. Brown, if you look at the numbers of Devontae Smith, they were very good. I think AJ's was more within the flow of the game. Devontae's was kind of, as the game was out of hand, he started to compile some numbers. But for the most part, play in and play out, and in the most crucial spots in the red zone, that's when this secondary played its best. Shout out to them. Very happy for that. And really, I think the biggest unanswered question on this defense was that secondary. And now we've got a lot of answers, and I feel really, really good about this defense going forward.
There really is no weaknesses to pick at, to be honest.
Yeah.
They're great against the run. They can get to the quarterback. The linebackers obviously are the best in the world. And, man, Jair Brown and Ambry Thomas, Oren Burks, hats off to you guys, because it's not like one of the things I know, Jesse, you were worried about, and it wasn't just you. I think a lot of people, and maybe rightfully so, was the depth of this defense. Right, we lost a lot of guys. A lot of the guys were young. But these guys Oren Burks is on the team for 2 years. Ambry Thomas I think this is his third or fourth year. Jair Brown obviously is a rookie, but coming in and really holding the fort. But I don't think there's enough said about the 49ers' ability to develop players. And once again, I'm going to put on my Shanistan hat and say, look, this is another key component to me why Kyle Shanahan is one of the greatest coaches in the game right now. He not only develops coaches the way that we've seen, and that's going to be that's a little Easter egg for an answer later on in the show for me, but these players, you can't say enough the fact that they could just bring in these guys and come in and play pivotal roles in pivotal games.
Yeah, most certainly. Cosmo, I know, but what's the alternative? We gotta be Cowboy fans for a few hours. It's just the way that it is. It definitely does suck, though. I will agree. Matt says, intelligently schemed, ignorantly violent.
Yep, that's what Ryan Clark said.
That's good. That's actually really good. Nee says, thinking about the Purdy MVP convo, I can't recall players ever pushing for a Jimmy MVP. The fact that the defensive leaders like Warner are so vocal, I think it says a lot about how much they value what he does. I think they certainly value what he does. I don't know that Jimmy was ever rightfully in the conversation. When you listen to the way that guys like Eric Armstead talk about Jimmy Garoppolo, they felt like they owe any success in their career to him, the way that they talk, because without him, they weren't able to win. And with him, they were. And they really talk glowingly of Jimmy. I think that Jimmy made an impact on this team. Not the best quarterback, but he made an impact on this team positively. And I think that Brock is doing that as well. And certainly, I mean, he's their guy. They should want him to win MVP. CMC should be in the conversation as well. Coach Shanahan talked about that before this last week's game, that he felt like he was the league MVP. So I think either way, this team would celebrate an MVP award going to either one of those guys on this team, and they would do so very willingly.